As an old internet saying goes that you might have heard of, if you're not paying for it, you're not the customer, you're the product being sold. Now, Google was quick to respond today, however, saying that its new operating system for the Android will have a similar automatic data encryption for the first time. The encryption had been optional, they say, since 2011. Some result here is that now most Americans have higher levels of privacy protection than the law requires. Android and Apple provide some 1.5 billion phones worldwide, so this is a big deal. But some law enforcement experts also say this shift comes with a very big cost. Joining me now is Craig Timber, who broke these stories for the Washington Post, Charlie Warzel, tech editor for BuzzFeed, a pretty digital place in and of itself, and Seema Iyer, former prosecutor and current criminal defense and civil rights attorney. Welcome to you all. Let me start with you, Craig, from your reporting. Why is this such a big deal, especially for people who do care about what's on their phone but think, hey, I don't ever expect to run into the cops anyway?
Well, the thinking was that customers aren't very good at maintaining their own data privacy. We don't really understand how all these settings work. But here, the companies are stepping in. They're encrypting all of these things by default for the first time. So even if you don't know anything about how your smartphone works, your data is protected from the police.
And Charlie, when you look at this and saying protected from the police, what's so interesting here, because we often think about this in terms of law and constitutional rights and the protections, which basically means the government stepping in some way and having a rule to protect you from what it might do. This is different, right? This is sort of code.
Yeah, I mean, this is Apple saying today that if we don't even possess the ability to get at this stuff. I mean, this isn't necessarily, we're not going to do it because we don't want to do it. We stand up for it. This is one of those Ulysses pacts, they call them. You're physically not able, and it is really sort of, it's a bold maneuver and thing to say to the government. You're going to have to work within this ecosystem that we just built. And as a sort of a techie, do you like it? Yeah, I think it's important. I think, Tim Cook saying that this is going to be a big thing for a year or two, this is going to be a big thing for the rest of time. I mean, these devices are getting more and more personal, demanding more and more from us to function. And so, we really need to make sure that this stuff is protected for the average person who, as Craig said, isn't aware of how to change these features. Right, and the personal side to it, and the reason why the Supreme Court in that decision, which was unanimous this year, which Lawrence O'Donnell talked about a lot at the time, was such a big deal because a lot of people, especially young people, but everyone these days has a phone, would rather let the government or a cop kind of go through your papers or your folders or your drawer than your phone. We know how much private stuff is on there. And yet, Seema, as someone who's actually prosecuted cases and thought a lot about public safety, what does it mean to you in this situation where not only is it a barrier to cops getting this material, but in many cases what the cops are being told is even with a warrant, Apple's not going to help?
Unless it is an emergency. And that's where things get very interesting. Because let's say I am approached by the police and there is an emergency. Ari is being held hostage somewhere. I have the information, the location on the cell phone. They say to me, okay, we need your passcode. Open the phone. I say, no. Shoot Ari. I don't care what happens. And then? They hold a gun to me. I give the passcode up. They find you. They arrest me. Everything gets suppressed. Evidence under the covers. And this is a life-changing moment in the criminal justice system. And the ability to procure evidence is no longer the same. The evidence that will be presented in any type of case, Ari, whether it's a robbery or a rape or a murder, usually the phones are taken and now there's a search warrant and they look under the context, under the text messages for communications to corroborate. How are they going to get that now?
And Craig, let me bring you back in on that point and mention, as you know from your reporting, you write about FBI and other officials saying it's going to make it harder. There's a larger context, of course, here, which is Apple is also responding, and Yahoo recently litigated very aggressively its response to the fact that some of these companies feel the NSA, originally under Bush, but then under this administration, has gone too far. Now take a listen to what James Clapper said about that.
The strategic environment also includes the recent factors that affect intelligence community capabilities, what I've referred to on the Hill as the perfect storm that's dogging and degrading our capabilities. The theft and leak of NSA and IC documents and loss of collection as a result. the resulting damaged relationships with foreign and corporate partners.
Craig, I want to be clear there. You have the National Intelligence Director. He's saying it's the leaks that he's mad about that have hurt his relationship with the corporations. You've got some corporations like Yahoo who said, no, it's not the leaks, it's the underlying over-surveillance that they had a problem with.
Right, but they also thought this wasn't ever going to come out, right? I mean, nobody saw Edward Snowden coming, but it's been a complete game changer for the companies, for the government, for the politics. What's been fascinating to me is that even as the political system has trouble digesting this, and Congress hasn't really acted to, necessarily clamp down on a lot of these issues, the companies are, and technologists are looking for ways to deal with these issues of government overreach on their own. They're not waiting for governments to do things. And that's part of what's going on here, is that companies are trying to protect their reputations. They're trying to protect their businesses, particularly overseas, where the backlash has been so intense. And they're looking to the code to solve this problem.
But do you buy it, Craig? Do you buy the idea here? Because let's be a little skeptical of the corporations here. Do you buy this idea that now they just care so much about privacy that this is Apple's edge?
Not at all, frankly. I think that what's clear is that privacy has become pretty good business at this point. There's profit in privacy, and Apple's working hard to really distinguish itself from Google in particular on these matters, right? Google has kind of won the fight to be the smartphone operating system of the world. Android has taken over almost everywhere outside of the United States. This is Apple's play, right? We're going to be more secure. We're going to give you better privacy, and that's not a bad message to tell. It's not a bad story for them.
And Seema, to put some of this in context, because there are some reports where the companies actually disclose how often this is happening. Right. Apple says, look, when they respond to these kind of government requests, it's less than 0.003% of customers that actually had their data disclosed due to government information requests, which would go to, some say, the police argument that, look, most of y'all don't have to worry about this.
But some people do, because there's so much. I had a case last week. The iPhones were taken. And just because a subpoena takes a while to respond to doesn't mean that Apple doesn't have to comply before today, before the new operating system. It's like, for instance, a toxicology exam. It takes 2 weeks. These things take time. The issue, and this is what you opened with, you said the word, it is impossible now to comply.
Functionally, yeah.
I think one thing that's really fascinating, first of all, about all of this is just how Apple and these tech companies are so powerful now that they can just do this. And just completely, I mean, I don't think they're obviously thinking about this very hard, but to them, this is a public relations thing. This is it is good for business. It's also just, it's game changing, and it has these ripple effects on the criminal justice system, and that's the space that we're living in now with these companies. They are so unbelievably powerful. Right,
and they're writing the rules in a way that matter, because the idea of, well, oh, you could use something else, or you could, opt out. Well, no, for a lot of people, especially everyone who's hooked on their iPhone, they can't opt out. Craig Timberg, Charlie Warzel, and Seema Iyer, thank you all for your time tonight. Interesting story.